Hi, I'm Cameron Bonsey, and you are listening to the You Were Born to Run podcast, and I'm here with my son, Brandon Bonsey, who's the head coach of men's cross country at Georgetown University, and he coaches the men's middle distance and distance group on the track, indoor and outdoor. So how many times have you and I talked about track?
In our lab, a lot, dating back a long time. Obviously, you were a great track runner in high school and college yourself, so it's definitely something I grew up with from as far back as I can remember.
Yeah, and it's been, you've been at Georgetown for 20 years.
When you count me as an athlete?
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't thought about that. That makes me feel incredibly old, but...
You are, but I think about that, and I think about you had 2 years that you coached at Syracuse. For the rest of the time, it was 2 years at Syracuse, right?
Yeah.
And the rest of the time you've been at Georgetown, that's a lot of experience and a lot of things that you've coached people through and accomplishments too. So when I, talking to you coming into this season, which really, cross-country season wasn't easy, but talk about new recruits and their impact on the program.
Yeah, we had... You're only as good a coach as the talent that you bring in. I mean, you could be a great coach, but if you coach a bunch of people that ran slow in high school, they're probably going to continue to be fairly slow. So, recruiting is like the number one thing that you do, and we're lucky to find a couple freshmen this year that have already had a huge impact on the team. Within cross country, Berhano Harriman was great for us all fall and just made the U20 World Championship team. So he goes to Serbia in like 10 days to go represent Team USA. And then obviously Tenoda Matsato is one of the better middle distance recruits in US history, running 147 and 358 in the mile in high school. And return that with a big group, and you never know how a freshman is going to adjust socially, academically, athletically, especially at a place like Georgetown. All those things are not easy. But thankfully both of them have had a really smooth transition, and they're roommates, so I don't know if that helps or not, but I told them back in the fall that they were by far the best freshman roommate pairing in the NCAA, and I don't know if they believed me, but they probably do now.
I think that hits on a really important piece, because both of those young men, in talking to you and just seeing them, they're mature. They race extremely well. They have innate strategy. They stay calm. They kind of follow the instructions, and they have positive personalities too. Seems like that's really had an impact on the whole culture of the team.
Yeah, adding it was seamless, especially when didn't add Berhano into running with the cross country team until Wisconsin, which is mid-October, and technically he's taken someone's spot of the top 7, which there could be jealousy or whatever. The whole fall everyone wants to race at the regional meet, wants to race at the national meet, but never once was anyone threatened by him, or he just kind of like, I told him like a week before we were leaving, I was like, you're racing, and he was just like, okay, sounds good, and handled that transition well. But yeah, they're both and obviously Tenoda came in as a fantastic recruit and has lived up to it, but 2 really positive kids, and get along seamlessly with the older guys, the younger guys, like just the whole team in general.
You can actually see it when a team's together. However, and that's been when since you and I have been talking about track for literally your whole life and watching the team, obviously we have conversations about the track team, what's happening, but watching this blend of 5th-year seniors and freshmen, it's just really kind of been magical in a way, because coming in at the very beginning of the season and the maturity of the freshmen, and then the experience of the seniors and the way they were so determined to do well this year. It's been up and down. Every person has up and down things over 5 years. But they came into this, and what I watched in the indoor season was everybody really racing. I don't remember a bad race. I remember some results that that weren't as good as what you thought. There were no bad races, and they were so determined. And then talk about how fast your guys ran in the middle distance races this year.
Yeah, I mean, I stress to them all the time. I was like, I'd rather have a team that was like a little worse but fought hard and competed really well than a team that's talented but it's kind of up and down and you don't know what you're getting. And we always talk about that, like, you want to line up with, in cross country, 6 other people, or, you know, in a relay, 3 other people, and know, hey, when this person gets the baton, I know exactly, like, I don't know how fast they're going to split or whatever, but I do know they're going to fight hard. And I think that for the most part we had that this winter. We ran a really fast 1,000 in January at Virginia Tech, where Tenoda broke the collegiate record as a freshman, and then 3 other guys ran 2:19, and Camden Gilmore ran 2:20, so 5 guys with that. And I believe the first 4 that all were under 2:20 was like 4 of the top 8,000s in NCAA history. So that was obviously, you do that in January and there's heightened expectations of kind of what you're going to accomplish, and kind of continued that. Tenoda ended up running 146 the next week to get his NCAA mark. Matt Piamps and Tim McInerney both ran 147 and missed qualifying individually for the national meet by less than 0.2 of a second, which sucks, but that's that's how it goes. Abel Teffer ran 354 in the mile. Parker Stokes and Camden Gilmore ran 357. So yeah, I think kind of across the board competed well and had people run fast in all the middle distance events.
Yeah, so that was significant, especially in some of those, Parker running as fast as he did in the 1,000 and the mile, heading into the steeplechase outdoors. That's a great indicator of the type of season that he's going to have. And then those guys not, the mile times. What was the mile? You had a mile race early in the season too that you thought was going to be a qualifying race for a couple guys, and it didn't go as well as you wanted.
Yeah, Abel ran 356, and then Parker and Camden ran 357. I thought they could run a little bit faster, but you still kind of have to take a bird's eye view that, like, we're sitting here, those were 3 of the 5 fastest times in Georgetown history. So you're still sitting there like, yeah, we wanted more, but we can't. The sport is so hard that if you don't celebrate the small victories along the way, it's going to get pretty draining and overwhelming. So kind of had to sit with them afterwards. It was like, yeah, we wanted to run a little bit faster, but you still competed well and ran fast. It just wasn't perfect, which it's not always going to be perfect.
That piece, finding that moment. So you go in and you've been doing this for a long time, and if they don't hit it, but they race well, and then you've got to coach each one. You've got to go to their own personalities and the way they react, right? So you have one talking to the team, but then how have you changed in the last 10 years with the way that you approach that emotional side?
Yeah, I don't get as angry as I used to. Probably calm down a little bit. Probably like celebrate a little less and stuff like that. But no, I just think that I've learned at meets is probably not the greatest time to have an in-depth conversation about things, where, especially if it goes really bad and I'm mad. Sometimes it's just they're really mad, but it's a very emotional time, so it's more, hey, let's meet in the office on Tuesday or Monday or something like that and go over things. That's probably been the biggest difference, is like I don't really try to have in-depth conversations at meets because it's just an emotional time, and most of the time both of us need a few days of reflection to think about, like, because half of it would be I might not know what to say in the moment. Like, I may need to be like, I need 2 days to think about this. So
I wish that I had learned how to wait a little more when I was like, parenting you.
Yeah. Yell at me less.
Yeah, yell at me less, not get angry, But as you age, that's what happens. So, so you go into, you sit, the team runs where was the qualifier for the distance medley?
At BU.
And you run 9:23.45, something like that.
7.8, I think.
7.8. And then you have to wait, because the team's like 11th.
Yeah.
Even though they've shattered the record.
Well, we were, Notre Dame was the next day, so I think we were technically like, I think we were like second, but then a bunch of teams, something like that. I can't remember exactly. But yeah, unfortunately, almost every time we've ever qualified a DMR, and certainly every time we qualified a DMR and it did well, we were always between 10th and 12th on the qualifying list, which I don't know what that is. But yeah, it's not a particularly fun place to be, sweating out the times. And obviously I knew through, especially on the men's side, it's a little more common on the women's side that people qualify through their conference meet. It's harder on the men's side. Like the ACC, they run the DMR on a Thursday, so they're fresh, and then they have their individual events the next couple of days. So I was a little nervous about that, but Virginia and UNC already had their times, and Virginia Tech, which were the three best teams. Virginia Tech beat us at BU. So I watched that in my hotel room nervously while I was at Big East, and then I was kind of like constantly scrolling through my phone. I was trying to find the Big 12 was in Lubbock, Texas. I'm trying to figure out what the altitude conversion is for BYU. But I knew even if BYU passed us, we still would have made it. But yeah, sucks. I hate doing that, and I wish I've had to do that many times. But I was very confident that as long as we just qualified, we would do well, especially because the depth that we have in a lot of other teams, either we're doubling people back from individual events, or once they take their best athletes off, just don't quite have the depth to be a great team. And I knew that honestly we had even more people that didn't even run that I think could have helped us on it. But I was pretty confident. I was just like, we just need to get in and we'll do well if we get in.
Well, one of the keys, and you said we had more people that didn't even run, because once you knew you were qualified, and Tenoda was running the 8, and then Abel was running the mile, and then you still had depth there. There were tough choices that you had to, as you selected each person. Tell me about, selecting Matt and Tim and Camden, and then you had Josh that was running the 400.
Yeah, and even that, I mean, I know that was a Coach McKenzie decision, but we didn't qualify the team with Josh as the 400 leg, so even that. But Josh went and split pretty fast at Indoor Big East, so it was, and he ran also a 200 PR and broke the Big East record twice. Broke it in the prelims and the final, so it clearly he was in good form, and he's very talented. So, but Nick did a great job on the qualifying one. But I think, obviously with how Josh ran at NCAA, it was the right decision. But I was pretty confident that I was going to run Matt on the 1200 and Tim on the 800. Then it came down to Parker and Camden, and I kind of just told them, hey, like, there's no point in you guys worrying about it, because ultimately I'm going to decide it, and you guys worrying has nothing to do with it. And I definitely went back and forth. I wanted to wait because you never know if someone's going to get sick, or I mean, honestly, I showed up to practice on Monday morning after the DMR, and Parker had fallen the day before and like had his knee was all cut up. And I wasn't why I didn't run him, but I was just like, well, this shit can happen. So you never know how someone's going to react in the moment to being told they're not in the relay. So I didn't want to tell someone that, and then something happens. And so, I kind of got through the Friday workout the week before, and then, I had immense confidence in all of those guys. I mean, Parker has run 818 in the steeplechase and had run 219 in the 1,000 earlier this year. I think he could have done a great job on it. Just ultimately went back and watched Big East and looked at Camden had beat him at BU when they raced the mile twice. And so they were like 2 and 3 in the mile head to head. And from a fairness standpoint, I was like, I'm going to go with him. And those guys are super close, and they both handled it super well. They both had talked. I didn't tell them it was down to those two, but they're not dumb. They're a lot smarter than me. So they kind of knew, and they were both like, hey, we're supportive of each other. So, they've been teammates for 5 years now at this point. And both of them knew, hey, whichever of us anchors, like, this is a really good team and we could do special stuff. And Parker was a fantastic teammate in Boston. And I'm sure he would have preferred to be racing, but he still, all those guys handled it well, and thankfully they had confidence in me that I would choose a lineup that would put us in a good position.
It was, as you talked about, and Parker being so gracious, and both of them working together, that represents exactly what happened in that race too. We were fortunate, your whole family went, and it was just a fantastic time for us. We saw Abel qualify for the finals, which we were so excited. That happened like at 4:00 on that Friday. I was crazy excited. You were excited because we saw you briefly. And then Tenoda just misses. He runs a good race, and it just didn't happen. So what were you feeling when Tenoda ran his race?
Yeah, I was frustrated he didn't make the final, but he's a freshman, and that's the biggest race he's ever run in his life, and you never know how you're going to react in that moment. And there were things tactically that could have been better, but there was no usually you're looking at mental mistakes at that point, stepping up a level. But I thought he handled it well. He was bummed, but overall you look at his indoor season, it went about as well as it could have, aside from one race. And watching the final, I think had he just made it, he would have done really well. So he kind of walked out of that at least knowing that he could compete well on this level. But then after that, I fully turned to the DMR, and I was frustrated with them because they checked in way later than I told them to. And I saw them after his race, and I was like, why are you not warming up? And I don't know the whole story, but I was just like, go, you need to go run. So then quickly it turned from being disappointed to being like, go do your warm up. So, because I'm not, they get to the track, I didn't even see them by the time because I'm up, the team area is downstairs, the track is on the third level. I'm watching Abel, and then Tenoda races at 4:30, so I don't really have time. Their race is at 6. I had asked them to start their warm-up at 5, and I see them at 5:04, and they haven't started yet. And I'm like, and they still had to go downstairs, so it was a whole thing. But quickly things changed. You're not really thinking about that anymore.
Yeah, in the race itself, kind of tell me about. I mean, I know what it was like for us, but from your perspective, as you break down each leg, tell me what you were feeling and what you were thinking and how each person ran.
Yeah, I thought Matt, 12 people on an indoor track in a 1200 is a lot. So we just talked about getting off the line well, and he is a good kind of burst at the beginning of races anyways. So he did a good job with that. In an ideal world, he's much better kind of being a little bit more relaxed, but from a positioning standpoint in a 1200, it's just risky. And I think you saw some teams kind of get caught up in some stuff in the back, and we knew that Josh is very talented, but he's a little inexperienced running a 400 because he's mainly a 200-meter runner. So getting him the stick as close as possible to the lead was maybe more important for him than someone who's run a bunch of 4x4s and 400s. I thought Matt ran a good leg. Was really happy with how Josh did. Obviously, I'm taking splits, and I see he splits 46.8. And then, I thought that Tim would probably be the best 800 runner in the field because he almost made it individually. So you're talking how many teams, unless they're doubling people back. So even when we were, slightly back at that point, I wasn't too worried, especially as he really never rigs up. He always has a good, last 100 meters. So as he was close, and I was like, okay, well, he's going to do something here. And then, at that point, at the end, we got the stick in a good position. I was confident in Camden. His form looked very smooth and relaxed the whole time. He made a good move early on to put himself up in second. And, they're really good. Ryan Choppy's an incredible runner. Wes Porter is behind him from UEA, is really good too. So at that point, you think you're in good position, but, when you're racing some of the best guys in the country, you never know. But I felt confident we were going to be in the top 3 or so by the time once Camden got the stick.
And then he ran, like you said, he just ran a really not sophisticated, but really consistent race as far as putting himself in position. And again, going back to Tim's leg, Tim's just had a fantastic season. He ran 147 like 4 times this year, something like that. And he's just super consistent, and he had the fastest split, as you said, and then he hands off, and then we were like, okay, we're in the stands, and we're so excited.
Yeah.
And then to watch Camden just run, we were screaming and yelling. And what did it feel like that last 200 meters? What were you? Were you screaming and yelling? What were you doing?
I just sat there in silence the whole time. If I had yelled instructions, he probably couldn't hear me.
Yeah.
But all I would have said is, be relaxed, stay where you are. So we've gotten redundant at a certain point. But he's a 5th year. He has good racing instincts, so I trusted that he would do the right thing. I mean, in hindsight, he said he wished he waited to 50 meters to go. But I mean, who knows at that point? I mean, he can't have any regrets on how he competed. And again, like Shoppy, they won last year too, and he anchored it. So he's really good at running from the front. He did the exact same thing last year in Albuquerque, splitting. I think he split like 3:59 by himself at altitude.
Yeah.
So he's really good, and clearly like did a good job of running a pace where it wasn't going to be easy for everyone to get back in the race, but also he had something left for the last like 50 meters.
Yeah.
So it's just so hard. Tactics are so different indoors than outdoors, and Camden made his move and he didn't quite get around him, and at that point it's just so hard to try to do it again. I think had he actually gotten around him, he had enough that he would have held him off, because Choppy would have had to swing wide. But the only thing we said at Big East, he tried to make this big move with like 180 to go on the turn. So my only thing to him was like, when you move, do it on the straightaway. And he waited. He did do it on the straight. The straightaways on that track are short.
Yeah.
So he tried, and did. Would have been fun to win, but he ran a great leg.
For us, in watching that whole thing, it was cool. We thought you guys were going to win. He was coming from behind, but we were so happy, and he ran a great race. And then the celebration afterward, it was that whole piece of all that work, and then having an event that's a team event, seeing those parents, those guys so happy. I mean, that has to be amazing for you too.
Yeah, it felt. I mean, those guys they were freshmen in 2020.
Yeah.
So they were super talented. I was very excited, like them coming out of high school, and they were starting to run well. They all redshirted in the fall, but they were starting to run well in the winter, and all of a sudden it's March, and boom, I don't see them again for 11 months. We weren't allowed back in person really until February of 2021. So they had went through a lot there, and they're all super close friends. All of their families come to basically every meet. So yeah, there was, and all like Northeast guys. Matt's from New York, Camden's from Maryland, Tim's from New Jersey, Josh is from Maryland. So especially those 3 distance guys like raced each other in high school and knew each other. So that grade in general has been close, and the parents have all been close and super supportive. So all of them have had a bunch of ups and downs in school, but a cool moment. That was the nice part of at the beginning of the year. We talked about like, hey, NCAA cross country is in Virginia, NCAA indoors is Boston. Like last year we're going like Oklahoma and Albuquerque. I was like, hey, this is like, we need to do. This is and that, like, of all the, I've been to a lot of NCAA indoor meets, and having it in Boston, that atmosphere was cool, and it was just so much easier for most people to get to the meet. And it was the same in the atmosphere in Charlottesville. I mean, our team is terrible, but the atmosphere was really good. So hopefully I'm not in charge of where NCAA meets go, but it was nice to have it in a place that was somewhat accessible to normal people, even someone coming from far away. Boston's got a major airport. It's a lot easier to fly into Boston than Albuquerque or something like that.
So those, especially those 3 in Parker and some of the other folks that you have, amazing way to cap off their senior years, their 5th year senior years.
Mm-hmm.
Going into outdoor, what are you seeing? What are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, you add in the steeplechase where Parker's been third, and Peter Harrell transferred from UCLA, made the NCAA final last year. So yeah, I mean, I think Tim said it in his post-race interview with Let's Run that they all thought they deserved to be there in individual events. And like, I watched them, and like, Abel came in 5th in the mile. Abel's very good. He's not all that much better than, if at all better than some of those other guys. So hopefully try to get as many people qualified.
I did jump over Abel. Let's go back to Abel for a second. Abel comes back for the mile final. Talk about his race. He is another kid that just is incredibly consistent and has gotten so much better since his freshman year.
Yeah. We just talked about like probably the first 800, it didn't really matter where he was because it's only 10 people. But then at some point, trying to put a move in before it gets fast, put yourself in good position. It's just indoor track with that many guys is just hard. And I thought I think he had the 3rd fastest last 200, and really was only by like 0.04 that he was slowest and he had to run a little extra distance than some people. So, you know, I think on an outdoor track, he's got a little bit more room to maneuver, that he can be even better than he was here. But I mean, yeah, he's just developed so well. His freshman year, he was by far the worst person on the team. Like, I didn't even know most of the team had been in Flagstaff that fall. So they were all very fit when they came back, and he didn't go to Flagstaff. And he was just like totally out of his element. Just getting dropped in almost every workout. But for whatever reason, he didn't get discouraged by that and like believed in himself when he was getting zero validation from practice that he was any good at running. But yeah, it's just kind of gotten better every year since then. Like, he went from, like I said, being the worst guy in the team, then he ran 3:59 in the mile as a sophomore, then ran 3:56 last year, and now 3:54, and you know, scoring at getting 5th at NCAA's. So he's a very easy person to work with. He's quiet, but he just kind of like goes about his work, and you know, had some ups and downs across country, but certainly on the track is, you know, a very, very consistent competitor.
Yeah, you just have developed this group that are run incredibly consistently, learning how to get past disappointment and loss, not taking a practice too seriously, understanding that it's about the future. I think you've done a great job of coaching them that way. And then, you know, the outdoor season, you got 800 mile steeple. Do you see anything else where people are potentially qualifying for the NCAAs?
We got some young, more distance-oriented guys that hopefully can run some good 5Ks in April. And then a lot of some with this distance stuff, if you're not totally exhausted by the regional meet, you can actually do quite a bit better than maybe what your like seed time looks like. Yeah. So we'll see. Yeah. But they've had some young, kind of more distance-oriented guys that have been training well. And I would say that Brana would be in that, but coming off of racing in late March in Serbia and then flying back, there's probably just not enough time. But I think he could run a really good 10K on the track. But he's young, so we'll wait till next year for that.
Well, I'm looking forward to his results in the World Cross Country Championships. Can't wait for outdoor. This was, you know, an amazing thing this indoor season to be there, hang out with you. So good luck in the spring, and you are getting old. Okay?
Thank you.
'Cause you were born to run.